Welcome to I Can Multitask, also in AL. Hey, I'm Eric, and just returned from Directions EMEA in Vienna. Super cool meeting all of you guys. I really enjoy saying hi to you, and keep watching. Many more videos are coming. This video is going to be about multitasking. I was actually on the plane home. I was working on something, and I had a thing where that suddenly say, why do the user need to sit and wait for the system doing this? It might as well be done in the background. And we do have an option for that in Business Central. So that's what we're going to do today. So let me, so that's a browser. That looks like a browser. This looks like a fresh app. Let's use this one. So how do we multitask? So normal code here is, of course, that we have a lot of code, and after line 13, line 14 is executed, and 15, and so on. And that is one session or one thread. The reason I say one session is because whenever we connect to Business Central, think about it as almost like an old-fashioned, you connect to something, then you work, and then you disconnect. That's kind of how the Business Central server, the service here works, is that a client connects, it does something, then it disconnects. There's a series of different patterns where this happens. The most obvious one is, of course, you go to a browser, and we go to BC25, and we connect. So we log in, and then we get to where we need to go. This process exists as this is a client. It's actually the same process that happens if you have an API. So the API connects to the service here. It opens a company, runs through whatever open company logic and stuff like that happens. Execute what needs to be executed, return the data, and kill the session. So it's open session, log into the company, do the stuff, log out. That's kind of the most fundamental pattern there is for talking with Business Central. So when our code runs, it runs in the middle of a session. What we can do is that there is a function here. Let me show you. There's a function called StartSession. StartSession takes a few parameters. So let's look at those for a second. A var session ID. So this is actually a return value. So we have a chance to look at the session. If I go to, I can't remember if this one will show me sessions. I think that's only the on-prem version that will show me sessions, where you can see the sessions. But every session gets a session ID. If I go instead here to help and support, scroll down, we can see that I am currently session 1089. This is my session ID. So when I do a start session, it will return a session ID. So, wow, what am I doing here? So we add that as a parameter. That will then get the value of our session. The next parameter is a code unit to run. The idea of the code unit that runs when the session is started, starts a session with our UI. That's what we're talking about. So I need a code unit for the work we need to do. So let's create a code unit. The work. How about that? That's a code. Wow, that is a code unit. The works, perhaps. And we need to have a on-run trigger here. So right now, I really don't care about what we're doing. So let's just sleep for 10 seconds. I think that's actually only for 10 milliseconds. So 10 times 1,000, that's 10 seconds. So now we have something to do. The works. Should we change this to be the works? So I can go back here and we can now say code unit, we can spell the works. The last parameter, or the last two parameters, are a company and a record. So right now I could say this, and this will now run. Can we see what it does? Well, maybe if we cheat here, and then we go customer record, customer, and let's do customer find first, customer dot address equal format current date time. How about that? And customer modify. Can't remember, is the address one of the fields that we show in the customer list? I should know that. Hello world. Let's change this to a list. Get rid of that one. It's not, but that will work anyway. Okay, so what we have now is we have something that does something. It waits. Let's wait only for 3 seconds because I am the impatient type. So when we open the customer list, we ask to go and run this other code unit in parallel with what we're doing right now. So let's try to run this. Maybe the 3 seconds were too fast for me. So I will log in, open the customer card here. This takes way more than 3 seconds. We scroll down and we can see that now we have a date stamp in the address field. So while it worked on actually open the card, the code unit did what it needed to do over here. That's pretty convenient, right? And that happened at the same time. There's a few things that we need to think about when we're doing this. One is this can fail if we're not encapsulating this in an if statement. If StartSession is unable to start a session, we'll get an error. So worst case, that is good enough. We get an error that does something that we couldn't do. Because this code unit runs in a different session, it's also a different database transaction. So we can, let's say that we do this, right? We say rec.delete all customers. Then we say error not deleted, right? So this will, of course, this error will roll back the delete, but whatever happens in here is in a different session. So from a database transaction perspective, that's a different transaction, and unless an error occurred in here, this will run through and this will commit. So be aware that you are in a different transaction, which sometimes can be actually an advantage, because how do you write to the database if you want to roll back? Like let's for instance, something happens, you know that you got to throw an error, but you would rather actually put it in a log that you failed. Well, maybe you just write to the log in a different session. But now we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's look at the two other parameters we had here. Oops. So we can specify a company. So we have the option that if we're working in one company and we need to do something in another company, we can also use this. Of course, we do have, let's say, I have a vendor here. So I could go and say vendor.change company and then other company, right? But the problem with .change company is that if there is validate code on that one, then the change company is only surface level deep. So there's a tendency for change company to screw up a lot of stuff unless you really know what you're doing. Where this one runs the session in the other company. If you just wanna use the last parameter, which we're gonna use in a second, then pass the current company name as the third parameter. So the fourth parameter is the exciting one. So what we can do here is that we can pass a record, and that could of course be a record we have, but you should really think about this as parameters. So let's say for some reason our process needs a vendor number and a customer number. So what we could do is that we would create a new table, StartSession parameter. Let's make this the table type temporary. So we go fields. We have field 1 is a customer number. That's a code 20. Field 2 is a vendor number. Vendron. That was the Spanish version. Vendor number, also a code 20. There we go. So nothing else. We don't really. So I don't even have to specify primary key. Then BC will figure out there's some sort of primary key for this table. It doesn't matter because there will only be one record in it ever. This is temporary. So what I could say here is create parm record start session parameter. And I could say parm dot custom number is hello, and parm dot vendor number is world. We pass this here. Now we need to go back into our code unit and then tell that the table number is start session parameters. And I can't remember if you can even say that is temporary. I don't think it matters. So now rec in the onRun trigger. So what we could do here was that we could go rec customer number plus space plus rec dot vendor number. So now rec is the inbound parameters. So if we go back here, we got hello world. We run this again. I open this one. The 3 seconds have probably passed, and now it says hello world. Uppercase because I made the fields code. So even though as I assigned them lowercase values because they're code fields, they're uppercase. So now I have passed a in-memory parameter to, I didn't even insert, I did nothing. It's just an in-memory record, which why primary key and stuff like that does not matter. And you can see that if you don't specify, this is actually a. So, short backstory. When Microsoft were converting CAL to AL, they discovered that, I think both in Microsoft's own tables, but also out in the world, that there were lots of tables that were specified without a key. And a thing that CAL did was that if you didn't specify a key, the first field would simply become the primary key. That's nice and easy. You create a simple field and the first field is primary key. Wow, that's convenient. And I think, and this is just my interpretation, that in the kindness and willingness for Microsoft to make sure that AL is very backwards compatible, they decided to do the same thing in AL. So that's why that we can now still create a table without a key, and the first key becomes the primary key. Anyway, this is why. Sorry, and now I'm making it even worse. So somebody from Microsoft will go, "Oh, all your videos, that's like it's Uncle Eric sitting and telling stories." Sometimes it is, and I told him that's why you can just drag the slider and the video to the juicy part if you don't want the stories. Anyway, now we can call our code unit with a parameter. That's very convenient. The next challenge is, what if we want to know how it went? Maybe there is something, not necessarily return value, because what in other languages, in other systems, there is a concept of semaphores. So you can like think about flags between boats back in the olden days, where you from one boat you can signal with flags and the other one can see it, and so on. In the world of multitasking, you could say that, okay, this task is now waiting for a semaphore. So it waits until another task waves the flag, that specific flag, then you continues and stuff like that. So you can kind of control, if you want to do truly parallel processing, so you parallel stuff, but at some point you need to meet again, so you have to wait. We don't really have the wait functionality in Business Central. I think there is some old videos on the channel where I needed to do something like that, and I cheated with the database. But right now, what I want to do is I just want to know how it went. So what we can do is that, remember the session ID. So if I go in here, I believe I have, if I go system dot, I think there is a session ID. Then I'll go session, and can I go session and ID? No, I can't, but I can go, I have session ID, perhaps session information. No, just session ID. So what I could do here is that I could kind of make a log. And now I know I'm just typing a lot of files in, a lot of objects into the same file, and I do that just to annoy people. Not really, it's not important right now. So if I make another table here, session log, how about that? And we add some. So this one will not be temporary, because remember, a temporary table And this is weird. This should here's the thing. A temporary table is per session. So if I create records, add records in one temporary table, those records cannot be seen in the other temporary table. This is the exception to that rule, that single record will make it pass, because it's not even in the database, it's just in memory. But if I create something here, let's do we could be thinking shortly that, well, I'll just make the session ID the primary key in this table. But the problem is that you could see that my session was 1089 or whatever it was. So it's not like the session, it's the number of sessions that are running, and so sessions ID can be reused, is what I'm trying to say. So you cannot expect the session ID to be unique over time. It's unique in the moment where it's running, but it's not after that number has done its job. You cannot assume that there's not another task right after it has the same number. So I think we need the session ID, but we need a primary key, so we could do ID and say that's a GUID. There we go, and then result, and that's a doesn't matter, that's a 600. This is a beautiful table, and because we're not CAL, we'll actually create a key with the same result as not creating a key, but that's a different story. So how about one instead? There you go. So now we have a session log, so we can create a variable for that, and we go log init, and we will go log.id equal create GUID. And now we can actually just go and say this is log.session ID. So we will get rid of this session ID here. And now I would go that if we succeed, then log.insert. Maybe we even wanted a timestamp, right? We could add a field 20 start time. That's a date time, and we could do a field 21 stop time. That's a date time, and if we're really fancy, we could do elapsed. That's a duration. So in this case, then we would say that log.start time equal current date time. So here you want to do this before session, after session. Actually, I might actually want to do it before. I think it probably doesn't matter when in the big scheme of it. So now what we can do here is that we need to this one needs to know about the log. So we will have to extend our parameter thing with a fuel field log ID. That's a GUID, right? So here we will go and say parm.log ID equal log ID. So, because otherwise this one will not be able to session log, find the log. So now we can go log get reg.log ID. And then we can say log stop time equal current date time, and log duration elapsed, sorry, was log stop time minus log start time. Then we do log modify. So that will work. This was table what? Table 5001. So if we run this now, we still just get hello world. So, but if we just do the quick and dirty table equal 5101. So now we can see that session 1125, there's an ID from it. We got a start time, not a stop time. Am I that fast? Or did something break? That would be interesting, right? How many seconds were we? So this is now the problem, right? What happened? Why didn't it work? Debugging these things can be really, really complicated. Did I make a boo-boo somewhere? We got this log and start time, that works. This one will get the log and fill out the fields. I feel that is correct. But I cannot argue with the fact that this is clearly not filled out. So what you can do, this is actually great, is that, and this is what I have done a few times. For instance, the SharePoint connector app has a bunch of stuff that runs in the background to avoid taking too much time. But I have in my setup, I have a debug flag. So we'll just simulate that. Say debug mode, Boolean, and then we'll just up here simulate that we said that. So I would go that if debug mode, then code unit dot run code unit the works comma parm else and in this case we probably need to insert the log, so we have to go log.insert here also. So if we're in debug mode, then we just run the code unit in the foreground. If we're not in debug mode, then we run it in the background. Let's see how that goes. Maybe I made a okay, and now I know what went wrong, but let's see if you guessed it. So it took 3 seconds and 44 milliseconds. We know that pause for 3 seconds. So why did this go wrong? Why are you yelling at the screen right now? You're yelling at the screen because in this case, the log record we are working with is not committed to the database yet. So the time before what happens here in this on open page is actually committed is probably shorter than then the very first statement here, that would be log.get. If I did this instead, I think actually let's try that. And instead of me saying that is so. And this is one of the interesting things about, as soon as you do stuff to more than one thing at a time, that there is some race conditions. And in this case, what happened was that because I had the log get at the beginning, this didn't have a time to actually commit this log entry. So if I dig into telemetry, we would see that the get would have failed. But let's try it out. So, see if I'm right, that this one still works. I think we just go to this one and say Control F5. There you go. See, that one works. But that's pure log, because that's just saying that this operation that's here takes longer than committing at the end. So in truth, I should not have done all this stuff. You can still go debug mode. I think debug mode is fine. But in reality, I would have to have committed here. Something like this. So let's try that again. See if this works. Oh, hang on, we need to go to this one. So if we don't like the commit, so now we have 3. You see there's no session ID on the 2 we ran in debug mode. So what can we do? But putting a commit in the code is rather annoying, right? So can we figure this one out without the commit? So what if we didn't have the commit? Well, that would mean that the insert is not really worth anything, which means that we probably need to look at putting everything into the parameters. So we'll have the start time. See if I can get out of the debug here. We will add the start time to the parameters. The session time is not really necessary. But instead of, then we would go with parm log ID is create GUID. So now we're just passing the start time, which we could actually also fill out inside the function. So we just pass the GUID. Let's just pass the GUID. So no start time in this one. So we add the log ID, and that's it. So now we go back here, and instead we go log init, and then we go log session ID equals session ID. We go log ID equal parm.log. It's rec dot log ID. We'll insert this. So instead of up, we can do this up. Do the init up here, and then we do log dot start time equal current date time. So now we fill out the log completely. So if we go back to this guy, And then we do something. Let's do the following. So we are off debug mode again, but let's just begin end. What we do here now is that we pretend something else is happening for 10 seconds. Then we go log.get because we have it. So we have parm.logid so we can get it. And then we can say elapsed %1 is log.elapsed. So now we're getting the log. If we really want to be correct with this, there's a command called select latest version that ensures that whatever you're looking at the database, you are getting the latest one. I'm actually not sure how much this one is still valid on Business Central. We used to back in the olden days, back in the age of the dinosaurs, we had to use this as soon as we were getting creative between sessions. Well, let's try it without. Let's try it without, and if this fails, then hey, we'll add it in and see if that would make a difference. So now we're in no hands, right? We have a 10 seconds wait in on open page, so that's why nothing is happening right now. So after the 10 seconds, I could have made it 5, but that's probably cutting it too close, perhaps. 10 seconds is a long time where you have to wait for it and talk. You can hydrate. This is a good moment to hydrate. And we got it. The reason that this took almost half a minute, and people say that I'm crazy. But let me specify that a bit. That on open page runs multiple times. In a lot of cases, it runs 3 times. So here, it ran 1, it ran 2, it ran 3 times. I don't know why, but it runs 3 times sometimes. Be aware of that. It's kind of weird. Anyway, that's why my 3 seconds felt like 30, because they felt like 30. So now what we did was we knew the log ID, and this one wasn't needed. You can see that. But because we couldn't trust the session, so we had to we had to pass in the log ID. We could trust the session on a very short notice, but the GUID is better. So that's a bit of multitasking for you in AL. I use it in a fair amount of places when something is happening, and there are 2 scenarios, or 2 requirements that has to be fulfilled. One is that the end user is not waiting for the results. So we don't care how long it takes, and because nobody is sitting and waiting. And think about it, there's a lot of operations that you do in the system where the only thing you're waiting for is for it to end. You're not waiting for a result, you're just waiting for it to end. The second part is what you would do if this fails. So error handling is important, and we made a simple log here. What we could have done if we really want to be advanced is that we will actually write 2 log entries for the same GUID. Actually, just explain here. So we will write in 1 log entry so we can see that it started, but if it has not, and then the second one will be if it when it finished. So if for some reason it never got to the end, you could figure that out. But those are the 2 reasons that nobody waits for the result. People just wait for it to get done. And the second part is that we're fairly sure that errors won't happen. And if errors happens, we have an ability to log them somewhere. That's multitasking for you. And I did not multitask while I recorded this, but you can check out this video, and that's not multitasking either, but it's probably some mail hacking. I'll see you there. Take care. Bye.